Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 208 as we continue to say our goodbyes to Rivendell after a nice long visit. You have to admit, we continue to work our way through. Who knows? Maybe we'll get up to... No, we're not going to actually do the poem tonight. Like, that's crazy talk. But who knows? Maybe, perhaps, there's a chance we will even get so far as... up to but not including the poem. We'll see how long it takes us to exchange Mathoms. But anyway, quick announcements before we begin. First, I just wanted to, I have some holiday-themed announcements today. Signum is here to provide you your unusual Signum, your unusual holiday gift ideas. We have, of course, not only a really cool array of holiday designs in our merch store, so you can get all kinds of fun things there if you go to our Signum Redbubble store, including some brand new designs. One popular one that we just added was one popular one that just added was the a quote that we stumbled across together in the Nature of Middle-earth discussions that we've been having on Wednesday nights in this one place where Tolkien waxed particularly Tolkienian and was talking about language being the primary art. So we put that design, just the phrase "language is the primary art" in our store. It has been popular so far. Anyway, so we have that. We also have, of course, our annual special on our Anytime audits. If you've always thought of sitting in on one of our master's degree courses, we have our Anytime audits, which are totally asynchronous. So what happens basically is you're able to get access to all of the lectures and materials for the classes so that you can kind of go through and listen through on your own pace. And that's of course we always have that. So you can buy a gift code for that, so you can give an Anytime audit as a gift as well to people. And also, of course, this year we also have space tokens. We have a whole bunch of people who have purchased tokens to give them away. There's been a lot of gifting. There's been a lot of token Mathoms being circulated among our community here already, and they make just wonderful gifts. And of course, if you give a token to somebody, then they become a token holder just like they bought it, which means they can select whatever module they want to take. You're not just kind of, pushing them into one particular module. You can give them a token and then they can select their own modules, and that means they can participate in the process of choosing which of our candidate modules get confirmed. So, moving forward from here. So that's it's been fun to integrate folks into that process. So I definitely encourage that. It's a really fun kind of group activity. There have been a bunch, some people who have started doing that. Some people who have started basically saying, getting a bunch of tokens and giving away several and doing a module together with a bunch of friends or family. That's something that has started to happen, and that I think is a pretty awesome thing to see happen. So definitely encourage that. To answer your question, Aslan's Compass, no, space classes will not have recordings. We're not planning to record those. Those are live sessions, and they're live small group sessions, and we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable about being recorded. A lot of people feel pretty inhibited if they know the session is being recorded. So it's really they're just designed to be live synchronous sessions for the live attendees. So at this point, we do not have any plans to record those. Can I imagine doing like some recorded ones in the future? Yeah, I kind of can. We'll see if we kind of do something like that. It'd have to be under special circumstances, but I can imagine kind of doing something like that maybe. But right now that is not the plan. So yeah, and they're pretty. And it's not. They meet twice a week, for the month. So it's not like an intense commitment. When you sign up. All right. So those are the things that are happening. Want to encourage folks to look into that, especially as we get into the holiday season. And as a quick reminder, I'll talk about this again at the end. I will be here broadcasting as usual next week. I am almost positive I will be here broadcasting as usual next week. The only thing that next Tuesday that's the day that my mother-in-law is arriving in town. So unless something unexpected happens, something unexpected in the mother-in-law category that happens, I should be broadcasting as usual. And I don't think there will be any problems there. But anyway, that's what. So I am planning to be back as usual next week. And so I'm not planning right now to miss any time for Thanksgiving. There will be a week or two I will have to miss in December, but for now I will be here. Okay. No admittance except on mother-in-law business too, Juice Man. I don't know about that. I'm not saying that I would be here in the basement of my house hiding from my mother-in-law or anything. I'm just saying that it's mostly if anything strange happens in the category of her flight getting in, basically, is the main thing. But anyway, yeah. No, Bart, I'm glad to say she is not, in fact, a Sackville Baggins. All is relatively well on that front. All right. Forthonless asks, is there going to be a live session for Yule again this year? I'm not sure. I'll have to talk with our people and see if we were planning that or not. I'm not 100% sure. If that's going to be happening again this year or not. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but I will look into it. All right, let us jump back into the text. We had just done the transfer of the sword, right? Bilbo had just given Frodo his sword, and we were looking last week in particular at the way that this was establishing a continuity of stories for Frodo. We started off with, we were noting how we as readers were being reminded of Frodo and Sam hearing the story of Beren and Luthien, right before we retired to Bilbo's room for the giving of gifts and the giving of his sword. So having, sort of made that connection with Beren and Luthien, we then get this intermediary connection with The Hobbit, which picks up, of course, on many parallels and some anti-parallels that we've seen before, but establishing, we talked last time about several kinds of consequences or implications of Frodo's journey being placed into a there and back again context by Bilbo, and we looked especially at Bilbo's book, which he was reading from, which seemed very unfinished, right? And again, thinking about those great tales. But now, of course, we have another gift to give. And I've been making lots of Mathom jokes because I think that, I think that they're very appropriate, actually. As it is, of course, the concept of the Mathom is a Mathom, of course, is like a useless old thing that's been circulating around the district, right? From one person's birthday to another. It keeps getting gifted and re-gifted around, until like somebody finally keeps it out of guilt or something like that, right? Is sort of the canonical definition of a Mathom. And there's an interesting irony, right? Because, of course, in the medieval tradition with which Tolkien was most familiar, that is, within the Anglo-Saxon tradition, regifting is kind of a big deal, right? To give someone a present that's brand new is a little lame, right? I mean, the really cool presents are a gift that you give to someone that has a history, right? You give someone a gift and it is famous for having belonged to someone else before, and someone else gave it to you and now you're giving it to them, right? That's not far from being a kind of slightly dishonorable, and dishonorable isn't quite the right word, but, there's, it's certainly a little bit lame, right? To regift something like that. Of course, when we think about regifting, it seems like an insult to the person who gave it to us, right? Somebody gives us a gift and we regift it to somebody else, right? But yeah, this was, of course, the opposite of the case back in the day. And one of the reasons that it is, again, back to the Anglo-Saxon context, and here I'm especially thinking about, Beowulf and the big deal that is made of the gift seat of Hrothgar. I'm thinking here of Alyssa House Thomas did a presentation on Beowulf at Baymouth, and she was talking about the gift seat of Hrothgar, and that passage where Grendel dares not approach the gift seat for some reason, right? Nobody knows exactly why he wouldn't approach the gift seat, and it was like Hrothgar wasn't even on it, right? It was empty, it was in the dark, but he wouldn't approach there, anyway, so one of the reasons that it's good to receive gifts, right? It's not because you want to use them, certainly not because you're going to sell them or spend them or something like that, but it's so that you can regift it, right? I mean, honor is given more by the giving than by the receiving of gifts. And so yeah, you keep it, and then in a later ceremony, you give it to somebody else and you get great honor from that. So the kind of tension, right, between that heroic, sort of Germanic heroic tradition with which Tolkien was intimately familiar, and this concept of Shire Mathoms circulating around the district, it's funny, right? I mean, it's a little comical, right? That particular tension, but especially so in this instance, because of course here we have a thing that is happening, which is, in one sense, precisely in that Germanic heroic tradition, right? Bilbo received his mithril coat from Thorin on a very significant occasion, right? On the occasion of Thorin's return to the halls under the mountain. Bilbo's essentially successful job as burglar, right? He was, as a gift and a reward, given the mithril coat by Thorin. And you'll notice, by the way, that Bilbo always remembers that. This is always spoken of as the dwarf mail that Thorin gave me, right? I mean, it's the giving, even more than the gift. That is really important in Bilbo's memory of this thing, as we'll see. But, and now he's giving it to Frodo, right? So on the one hand, as I say, this scene that we're about to read is very much in that heroic Germanic tradition. But at the same time, the thing that is being given was also literally sitting in the Mathom house, right? Anyway, so I think that Tolkien is actually kind of having some fun on purpose with the heroic Germanic tradition. Yes. Now, you're right, Bjorning, that objects and useful objects were much more precious in the Middle Ages. You're right. what's more, as I think Bjorning Tolkien would probably have added to your observation there, is that things were also better made. That is, Tolkien had a big problem with mass-produced junk in the 20th century, and harkened back to the day when even things like a chair that you sat on at table was something that was handmade by a carpenter who cared about his craft, as opposed to something, well, literally turned out in an assembly line. And so, yes, and absolutely, Barthram, these things were more expensive too. And that's another reason why these gifts were a big deal. A sword was huge. I mean, a sword was like as far as an investment is concerned, a good sword, in the Anglo-Saxon era was about the equivalent of not just a car, like a nice car, right? Like a luxury car. If you had a good sword, I mean, it was a huge deal, But anyway, so yeah. Okay, so with that preamble, both to explain the teasing I'm doing about this Mathom that Bilbo is passing on, the regifting moment here, but also yeah, again, I think he's very aware of both of these traditions, and I think that we can see them both in tension here in this passage. Also there is this, said Bilbo, bringing out a parcel which seemed to be rather heavy for its size. He unwound several folds of old cloth and held up a small shirt of mail. It was close woven of many rings, as supple almost as linen, cold as ice, and harder than steel. It shone like moonlit silver and was studded with white gems. With it was a belt of pearl and crystal. It's a pretty thing, isn't it? Said Bilbo, moving it in the light. And useful. It is my dwarf mail that Thorin gave me. I got it back from Mickle Delving before I started, and packed it with my luggage. I brought all the mementos of my journey away with me, except the ring. But I did not expect to use this, and I don't need it now, except to look at sometimes. You hardly feel any weight when you put it on. I don't think I should look right in it, said Frodo. Just what I said myself, said Bilbo. But never mind about looks. You can wear it under your outer clothes. Come on, you must share this secret with me. Don't tell anybody else. But I should feel happier if I knew you were wearing it. I have a fancy it would turn even the knives of the Black Riders, he ended in a low voice. All right. Likelyabot says, I'm sort of astonished that Frodo had never seen the mithril coat. I think he has. I don't think he can possibly have avoided seeing it. Yeah, I'm sure he's seen it before. Yeah, I'm sure he's seen it before. Again, he almost has to have. I mean, it's been in like public circulation. It's been sitting in the Mathom house. Now, it doesn't mean he necessarily goes to the Mathom house to visit it all the time. But he is. But notice that. Yeah. It's possible that Bilbo mentioned it in the telling. Oh, Bilbo certainly would have mentioned it in telling the story of his journeys, for sure. Yeah. Agreed. And Silkwest, I agree. Frodo doesn't act exactly surprised to see it. The description of it does kind of give the impression. I could see how that could lead one to think that, like, maybe he was, he hadn't seen it before, given the detail of the description. But there, I think that's just a narrative technique there to he is he's describing it because it's important. It's going to be important on many future occasions, how staggering this coat is. Yeah. So anyway, also notice the rather unceremonious way that Bilbo brings it out, right? It's a parcel which seemed to be rather heavy for its size. that gives me the impression that it's quite small, because we know it's not heavy, objectively speaking, right? So it can't be folded into a large bundle, which seemed heavy for its size. Because if it were a large bundle heavy for its size, then it wouldn't be true that you hardly feel any weight when you put it on. It's supple almost as linen, right? So it's very lightweight. That suggests to me that he has folded it up. Like, presumably he didn't wad it up, right? He didn't just crumple it up and then wrap it up. But I think it's folded down into a quite small parcel, which looks like it could be, something or sort of anything, but would be heavy for its size, right? If it were folded up into the size of like a sandwich or something, right? It could be folded up like that. And then it would be kind of heavy for its weight. Yeah. What strikes me here, he unwound several folds of old cloth, right? Kurtzimus, I wonder, how many times can you fold a mithril coat? I think we have to do a reenactment of this. So everybody bring your mithril coat and we'll do a folding. I wonder how many times you can fold it. How many times do you think you can fold a mithril coat? I bet you could like tri-fold it and then roll it up, and it would be pretty. You wouldn't actually fold it like paper anyway. You'd roll it, right? I would tri-fold it, and then I would roll it up. I think that's how I'd do it. If I were wadding up a mithril coat and stowing it, I think that's what I would do. Yeah. No, and I assume that the rings are very small indeed. Yes. The fact that it's as supple almost as linen suggests, and also the fact that it says it was close woven of many rings, right? So these are not big ol' honkin' rings, like, chainmail you might have seen at a museum or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so he's folded it up into he's put it together into a small bundle, right? And then he's wound it around with several folds of old cloth, right? What do you notice? What does that suggest to you? I think this tells us something fairly striking, doesn't it? In the Shire, this thing was on display in the Mathom house, right? In the museum at Mickle Delving. I think that it is possible that the old cloth, we're not told what color the old cloth is. Maybe it's hard to tell what color the old cloth is. Maybe it might have been dark green at one point. But it's possible that that's the case, that we're given no indication of that, though remember we were given that clear indication back in chapter 1. Bilbo's hiding this, right? Bilbo has it the opposite of on display. He has it shut away in a box, wrapped up into a very small parcel, wound up inside several folds of old cloth, right? Now, I am not suggesting that he's worried somebody's going to pinch it, right? I don't think that this means Bilbo is getting paranoid in his old age and is afraid someone's gonna sneak in and steal his mithril coat. What I think it does mean, though, is that he is not displaying this. He is keeping it secret. He is keeping this secret. I don't quite know why. Maybe he doesn't know why. But yeah, I don't think. Again, I doubt that he's trying to protect it or feels that he needs to protect it. That does not feel right to me at all. I can't see why Bilbo would think that in Rivendell. But But it's interesting because it was, Kurtzimus, I do think this is a sign of humility on his part. This is the coat of an elf prince, right? And I'm reminded of Glowin's words at the council, right? I see elf lords here, right? Bilbo is constantly surrounded by elf princes, right? I mean, he could bring it out on occasion, right? He could at least hang it, get a stand for it and have it there in his room where he could see it all the time, right? No, it wouldn't look out of place in Rivendell, right? I'm sure he can walk down the hall and find older and more precious things, on display various places in Rivendell. I bet they are. I mean, Elrond's been around for a while, right? But he doesn't do that, right? Bilbo is not, he's not like, tried to fit in or anything. JJ says in the Shire, he might look rather silly in one way, but in Rivendell, he'd look rather silly in quite a different way. Yeah, I agree. He would. I agree. Now, Balangsmond, I really like that theory. Balangsmond says he might not want Elrond or Gandalf saying, you don't need that. You're not going on another adventure anymore, because he secretly wants to go on another adventure. Yes, I do believe... I do believe that this is very likely the reason for that. And I wonder, Balangsmond, if this actually suggests something that we missed last time, right? That is the significance of the phrase. Let me hang on a second. I need to scroll all the way down here. In the last one, where he said, take it if you like. I shan't want it again, I expect. Right? And that, at the time, we kind of accepted that as, it's a humble thing for him to say. He's trying to say it's not a big deal. But I think we might have missed what a big deal that kind of is, actually. Right? I think that he has. No, we know that he has wanted to go on a journey. What journey did he want to go on? We know this. He told us this. That he has not thought he was retired for good. There's been a journey he's been spoiling to make, but which he hasn't been allowed to make. Gandalf and Elrond have repeatedly told him not to do it prior to this point. Do you remember that? He mentions it to Frodo. Yeah, JJ, going back to the Shire to fetch his ring after he heard about it and what a big deal it was and that the enemy was looking for it. Right? He's always wanted to. He said he volunteered to do that several times. And then in the council, he volunteers to take the ring again, right? And you'll remember at the time I was talking about Gandalf's response to that and how careful I think Gandalf is being there, gentle and kind and affectionate as well, but also a little bit cautious because things could be about to get sticky in that moment for all Gandalf can see, right? And then Bilbo laughs, as we discussed at the time, right? And the tension kind of dies there. Bilbo, it's not until that moment in the Hall of Fire that I'm pretty convinced that it's not until that moment that, that moment when he says, don't adventures ever have an end, right? When he realizes, I understand everything better now, right? That's the moment, I think, when Bilbo has really permanently given up the ring. And therefore, he's now actually and permanently retired. Especially since he made that offer to take the ring and it was refused. It's clear that he's yeah. When a football player gets injured and doesn't want to get taken out of the game, he will sometimes hold on the sidelines, hold on to his helmet, right? Because it's an old trick for coaches to tell somebody to take his helmet away, because if he doesn't have his helmet, he can't go back in the game, right? And I wonder if Bilbo stashing his mithril coat isn't something like that, right? Gandalf, if he saw him have it, right, might say, if he knew that he had it there in his room, might say, you're not going to need that again, Bilbo, are you? Right? Why should he hang on to his sword? And why, remember, Gandalf assumes it's still collecting dust back in the Mickle-Delving Mathom house, where he's going to say that later on, right? Gandalf doesn't know that Bilbo has it. I mean, we will get that piece of evidence later on that Bilbo is not, it's not just that it's carefully kept up and he only takes it out on special occasions. Gandalf does not know that he has it, right? Gandalf does not know that he has it. Yeah, they can take away my license, but they can't have my car keys. Something like that, or something like that. Yeah, so it occurs to me that when he says to Frodo in that last scene, that line that we just breezed past last time, I shan't need it again, I expect. This is a big moment for Bilbo, right? It's almost like he's making Frodo his heir all over again, right? The adventure that he had thought to go on, right? To take up the ring again, to be the ring bearer for dubious reasons, right? I mean, his desire to go back to the Shire and fetch his ring is clearly a pretense, right? I mean, that has ring rationalization all over it, right? And even his offer to be the ring bearer at the council is not obviously perfectly free of that. Again, there's more to it than that, right? And we know he's trying to protect Frodo as well, right? But there's got to be at least an element there of, this is a way I could get my ring back, right? And it would be cool. It would be legit. I wouldn't be stealing it. It would be in a noble, self-sacrificial way. And so everybody, even Gandalf, would approve of that, right? I mean, I cannot believe that there isn't at least a percentage of that in Bilbo's mind when he does that, right? But when he gives up the ring at the Hall of Fire, and then when he again accepts that at the council and does not start going on another tirade like in chapter 1, if you want my ring yourself, then say so, anything like that. I think that it's, those are the moments, right? Bilbo has won. Bilbo has triumphed. And I think that we're seeing that triumph here in a really quiet way, but I think a really significant way. So Balangsmond, yeah, you've totally convinced me. I am utterly won over to your way of thinking, Balangsmond, that his folding it up and concealing it the way that he did really does suggest, in his heart of hearts, he was prepared for another journey, right? And a moment's notice. Because those are the two things, right? I mean, if there are two things that he would want on a trip, right? If he's going to go off on an adventure, he's going to want his sword and his mithril coat, right? I mean, obviously, his invisibility ring would have been at the top of his list, but inconveniently, he doesn't have that anymore. Yeah. And his book, of course, Balangsmond, yes. He would take his book too. But you'll notice, Balangsmond, that's the tension, right? Within Bilbo, right? His book is, of course, also certainly a thing he would never leave behind. But it is not connected to his, I mean, it's connected to his adventures in that he's writing his adventures in it. But on your adventures is not the place to write your, you don't write your book while on the adventures. You write your book when you come home from the adventures, right? So it is almost like what we're seeing here is him choosing his book over his coat and sword, right? He's not personally going to be doing any more adventuring. It's like he's accepting. Remember, Gandalf said this too, right? That his role in this story was over, except perhaps as a recorder, right? And so he's owning that, right? He's owning that. He's choosing his book and his retirement, right? Which, remember, he was explicitly connecting with his book in the council as well, right? Talking about the ending for his book, right? And how much he was enjoying getting a chance to finish his book. Yes, that he will have, that he will retain. But his sword and his coat, he is giving up. And that, I think, is, the more I think about that, the more significant I think that this moment is in that way. Exactly. You're right, Matt. And I wonder, again, thinking back to that heroic Germanic tradition that I was discussing, Matt points out that within that tradition, there is an additional and very significant title lurking from that tradition. When a lord who gives Hrothgar in Beowulf is called, one of the phrases that's used to describe him, because he is the great giver of gifts, the great lord who gives gifts in his hall, he is called the ring giver. And yes, Matt, obviously Tolkien would have been very aware of that concept of the ring giver and putting Bilbo into the position, juxtaposing Bilbo with this kind of Hrothgar-like figure, right? The old man, the great old man giving gifts to the strapping young hero, regifting these great gifts which he received in his own adventurous youth, right? In his own heroic youth, upon the accomplishment of his own mighty deeds. And now he, gives them to, the new young hero. He is exactly acting like a ring giver. And of course, although this is not really a moment in most other ways, right? In outward appearance, certainly this doesn't look much or sound much like the scene before Hrothgar's gift seat. It is nevertheless, of no one has the phrase ring giver ever been more, appropriately applied than to Bilbo. I think that's well remembered. And Kendall, you're right. He is now exchanging his sword for a walking stick and his coat for his book. Yeah, exactly. And I know, Silk Westcott, it is stunning to imagine that Tolkien might be making Beowulf references. It's pretty uncharacteristic. I know. Yes, and Emily, of course, Sauron was also a gift giver. Anatar was the ring giver of old, right? And so there is definitely an irony there as well. But that, I think, Emily, is part of the sort of, it's like one of several ways in which you can tell that Sauron is very evil, right? Sauron is undermining the giving of gifts itself, right? It's not just a posture. It's not just a disguise, right? It's not merely, if I give presents, people will like me, right? And therefore they'll think I'm nice, right? I mean, yes, that's also true. But it's not just that, right? By characterizing himself as the giver of gifts, he is also, and you can hear this parallel much more strongly after you've read, as we did, those of us who did the Morgoth's Ring discussion last year, when we were reading the Athrobeth and the Tale of Audenell and stuff that came after, that is Tolkien's kind of draft version of Melkor's corruption of the original generation of men, right? That's how Melkor positioned himself when he was trying to put himself in the position of God, right? I am the one who gives gifts, right? I am you owe what you have to me, not to Eru, right? That was Melkor's whole posture towards humanity, in that first generation, in that sort of fall of man legend that that Tolkien wrote. And in Anatar, we can definitely hear an echo of that, right? He's posturing to, because remember, it's a scale thing, right? When you call yourself the giver of gifts and you're coming to Celebrimbor and Gil-galad, right? You're coming to the greatest people in all of the lands, right? The greatest and most powerful, and you are coming to them and saying, I'm the giver of gifts. That's not a posture that you take if you're, again, you're not like, I'm going to give you presents to try to butter you up, right? To give presents, that is a power play, right? You are claiming superiority in a sense, right? Like, I am going to confer honor and benefit upon you through my gifts, right? It's a pretty significant move by Anatar there. So he's claiming, again, not just to be a swell guy who gives away fun stuff, but he was making a much more sort of significant play there. But again, so again, my point is that that's just, it's like a much sort of deeper corruption of the whole gift giving thing, right? But anyway, okay. That is awesome. Yeah, belongs mine. I never thought of that before. And I think that's exactly right. To see this moment as not just, I mean, it is certainly a passing of the torch from Bilbo to Frodo, right? It is obviously a manifestation of his very deep love and affection for Frodo, right? He is obviously caring for his safety more than anything else, right? And he would give this sacrificially even if he did need it, right? He doesn't need it anymore, right? So in that sense, it's like the easier to give. What was he doing with it anyway, right? And that's kind of how he might try to play this. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal. He is giving Frodo a part of himself. He is making a kind of concession, which I think is a very, very big deal here. Now, let's get back to the description here. So we got as far as sentence 2, which is pretty good so far. It was close woven of many rings, as supple almost as linen, cold as ice, and harder than steel. It shone like moonlit silver and was studded with white gems. Okay, so the poetic description is really interesting. Again, on the one hand, oh yes, Almaria, yeah, this is Christmas morning. I'm pretty sure this is Christmas morning that this is happening. It's the last day. So I mean, it's conceivable that the last day would be characterized as like their last day there. In other words, the day before they left. So it is conceivable that it's Christmas Eve that this gift giving is happening on. But it is also possible that it is the last day. Like today's the last day, we're leaving today. And so before they're leaving, while Sam is busy off not packing rope, Frodo is receiving gifts from Bilbo. But yes, you're right, Corey, that gift giving on Christmas Eve is also very traditional. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, the poetic description It was close woven of many rings. Okay, that's just a physical description. As supple almost as linen, cold as ice, and harder than steel. It shone like moonlit silver and was studded with white gems. Yeah. By the way, Matt, I agree with you. I think it's Christmas morning. And I think it's Christmas morning for exactly the reason that Matt says. Matt is going to... Matt's pointing out that Bilbo's going to have him put it on at the end of this passage, which suggests that they're actually about to leave. Yeah. Now, I agree. I agree that... cold as ice. I don't think that's a reference to the fish riddle. Because, of course, the fish was cold as death, which is not a comparison you would necessarily want to make. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if we can get more evidence about when exactly they leave. But we'll see. That's... hopefully we'll get to the departure by Christmas. I think we'll get to the departure by Christmas. I'll be doing the poem beginning in December. It's going to be close. It's going to be right there. It's going to be right there. I bet you that we're going to be discussing like the Christmas week, like the week after Christmas, the week right before Christmas is when I'll be away. But like right around in there is when we're going to be discussing like Gimli and Elrond's aphorism contest and all kinds of things. So, yeah. Anyway. I don't remember, Matt. I don't remember if one of the descriptions of armor in Beowulf calls on rime or hoarfrost. Maybe. I'm not remembering it that detailed there, but yeah. That's assuming we're not still on this paragraph. We're so almost done. But hang on. Here's what I'm trying to focus on. Who's our narrator here? Who wrote that line? Those two sentences. It was close woven of many rings, as supple almost as linen, cold as ice and harder than steel. It shone like moonlit silver and was studded with many white gems. It was studded with white gems. Who do you think? Frodo? Sam? Findigil? Bilbo is a possibility. I think Findigil is a candidate. I think a legitimate candidate. There's something in the tone. Whenever the cadence gets this explicitly poetic, the heightened and nearly mythic language, Neoplatonian, is just the kind of thing that we do associate with Findigil. Although it's he tends to Findigil, by our reading, right, tends to butt in, especially around descriptions of the king, right, of Aragorn and of the queen. Yeah, Mad Violinist, I'm also not quite sure that it is quite purple enough. And also, I'm not sure that Findigil would wax poetic about this. Again, we've never had a passage that I'm convinced is Findigil that was not like Gondorian in some sense, right? I think I would be, I'm not sure who said it just a minute ago. Yeah, Captain Mo, I'm with you. I think I'm on Team Sam. For Almarea, exactly the reason you just said, that he would have both an epic and sentimental view toward the coat. It is possible that Frodo is honoring Bilbo's gift with this poetry. I do think, Bjorning, that's very possible. That's very possible. yes, Frodo is honoring Bilbo's gift with his poetry. That would be, if Frodo did write this, that's why he would do it this way, right? He would want in this moment to emphasize the significance of the gift. What a kingly gift this was for Bilbo to give. But yeah, Sam, I think it's certainly poetic enough for Sam. We know that Sam, of course, also does lapse into a poetic kind of diction. And Almaria, it is exactly his sentimentality towards this coat of Frodo's, right? Now, remember, there's also a narrative reason for this. It is important to emphasize how striking the coat is, right? How gorgeous, how resplendent this coat is, because it's going to be important at several future points. Remember, hundreds of orcs are going to lose their lives on account of this coat, right? And so establishing that this is an object that is going to be an object of remarkable desire to anyone who is of a covetous frame of mind is important for plot purposes. But I think that I certainly don't think it's above Sam's poetic capability, especially later Sam, right? This is, remember when we're talking about Sam's hand anywhere in the narrative, we're talking about editorial Sam, right? Bilbo has started the book, Frodo's going to finish the book, and then Sam is going to edit the book, and then Findegil is going to copy the book and possibly beef up some bits. So Findegil's intrusions should be fewest, and for my money anyway, there needs to be a reason, right? There needs to be a reason why Findegil would do it, right? Because he's not just probably not going to just be like, wow, this could use a little spicing up in places, right? You know, but again, especially the one I am most convinced that Findegil added, my favorite Findegil interpretation of ours is that description of Arwen at the feast when Frodo first sees her. I love that as a Findegilian intrusion, because that seems like exactly the kind of intrusion that he would make, and a sufficient, a more than sufficient justification for intruding. And possibly that description of the sword that we were talking about just recently. But yes, Balancemund, it is a more mature Sam, right? So the narrator Sam, this is not current Sam, right? This is Sam, several years later. We don't even know exactly when Sam set himself to whatever editorial role he set himself. I can't imagine he started doing that immediately upon Frodo's departure, right? Even. Exactly, JJ. I would think Sam preparing to read the book to his kids is more or less when we would begin to get editorial Sam working there. And editorial Sam, now in his, married Sam, in his middle age, scholar Sam, right, having inherited Bilbo's books of lore and continued his study of elvish things, Sam having very consciously taken up the mantle of the person. Remember, we talked about this last time, right, of Bilbo being consciously taking up the mantle of keeping the legends of the old world alive in the new world that's coming. And we talked about the significance, perhaps even the significance in the minds of Elrond and other elves, such as Lindir potentially and others, who perhaps take Bilbo's poetry much more seriously than he thinks that they do, or thinks that they should, right? Because he doesn't think it good enough, but they know how important it is that somebody is going to remain to be continuing to pass these stories down. But Bilbo, of course, it is Sam who is going to be Bilbo's heir. In this, right? He is the one who is going to be carrying on, very self-consciously carrying on that tradition of handing the stories down. He will be corrupting a new generation of Hobbit youth learning them their letters, right? And then teaching them stories about elves and teaching them to recite poems about Gilgalad, the Elven King. So anyway, yeah. So do I think so that's the Sam that we're talking, we need to remember that that's the Sam that we're talking about here, right? When we talk about editorial Sam. Yeah. So, okay. Personally, I would say Sam. I'm totally open to the Frodo reading. I think that it's very possible that Frodo could have written this, and might have written this in honor of Bilbo. But I do personally kind of like the Sam reading there. It's a pretty thing, isn't it? Said Bilbo, moving it in the light. And useful. It is my dwarf mail that Thorin gave me. I got it back from Mickle Delving before I started, and packed it with my luggage. I brought all the mementos of my journey away with me, except the ring. But I did not expect to use this, and I don't need it now, except to look at sometimes. You hardly feel any weight when you put it on. This is a complicated speech from Bilbo here. First movement, right? Understatement. It's a pretty thing, isn't it? And useful. Yeah. Yes, it is. It is both pretty and it is also useful. Kendall points out pretty and useful like the ring. Yes, the ring also was both pretty and also useful. Yes. So the Bilbo's first move, I think, is both to underplay it, right? Throughout, Bilbo is going to be downplaying the significance of the gift, right? This is where that tension of that tension between the mathom concept and the heroic Germanic tradition of gift-giving concept becomes really apparent, right? Hrothgar, on his giving seat, on his gift seat, does not downplay, does not say like, oh, here's a little thing, it's nothing really, but I thought you might like it, right? That is not how you give gifts, right? From the gift seat. So that is definitely not what you do. And yes, the downplaying Captain Mo is Bilbo talking like hobbits do. I agree. That is interesting, Mad Violinist. Mad Violinist says, interestingly, we have no evidence from the Hobbit that Bilbo ever used the mail coat. Even in the Battle of Five Armies, he went invisible rather than relying on the mail coat. I bet you he was wearing it. Yes. Wait, he's wearing it when he sneaks into the elf camp, isn't he? Isn't that described when they're describing how odd he looks, like how Bard and the Elven King don't know what to make of him, right? I think he's wearing it then. Is he? Yes, he's more deserving of it than many who have looked more comely in it. Yeah. That's right. That's what I was remembering. So he definitely wore it. But I agree, like, he believes, he's going to say, I have a fancy it would turn even the knives of the Black Riders. Explain the logic underlying that conclusion, please, right? Like, has he seen it? But we do have to remember that it did stop Thorin from shooting him. Remember, Thorin points it out that he's wearing it too. That's right. You have mail on, right? But he's gonna sting his feet, right? Because he can't kill him with arrows, because that's it. You have mail upon you which was made by my folk and is too good for you, and it cannot be pierced by arrows. But if you do not hasten, I will sting your miserable feet. There it is. Thank you, JJ. Yes. So he has Thorin's word that it will stop arrows, I guess. But I guess we should be careful. Bilbo has had other adventures, none quite as famous, right? But he's made other journeys, and who knows what might have happened. I bet you he's worn his mail coat. I think, by the way, that he gave it to the Mathom house. This was a theory. I was talking with Tony Mead at the first Magnolia Moot, aka the only Magnolia Moot so far, I think. Hopefully we'll fix that in the spring. But back at Magnolia Moot, Tony was there, and Tony and I were talking, and we were theorizing that, and I think I've talked about this before, that the 60 years, right, when Bilbo was back in the Shire, were kind of divided into two periods, right? There was like the period of Bilbo traveling and adventuring, when he was often seen wandering about, and it was said that he went to visit elves and all this kind of thing. And then he settles down and he adopts Frodo. Like when his younger cousins start growing up, like he had no companions, right? He was still kind of a loner. And then he adopts Frodo, and he, makes friends with his younger cousins, and he sort of settles down and becomes teacher Bilbo, right? That's when he teaches Sam his letters. And so, he goes from, I'm like gathering lore and new songs and learning things and seeing the world, to, or at least, the world roundabout, to now I'm going to teach. I'm going to teach Frodo. I'm going to teach Sam. I'm going to, be a bad influence on the next generation full time. And my suspicion is that's when he gave it to the Mathom house, essentially. Yeah. And Likely About, I agree with you that, Likely About says, I can picture Bilbo sitting beside Frodo as Elrond tried to heal him, and Bilbo thinking to himself that perhaps the mithril coat might have saved Frodo this wound. Absolutely. Yes. That being very conscious, having been there with, through Frodo's whole convalescence, he is very conscious that of Frodo's danger, right, and of how close to death death and worse he came from that wound. So yeah, it may well be, Mr. Big, as you say, the catalyst for giving it to him. But anyway, okay, back to his speech. It's a pretty thing, isn't it? And useful. So not only is he using, very understated words, right? But even like just, I'm going to give you this simple, practical gift, right? And that's, of course, what everyone hated hearing as kids at Christmas time from their parents. But, if your parents handed you a present and said, this will be useful, right? Didn't your heart kind of sink a bit? But that's the way that he characterizes. This is a purely practical gift. It is my dwarf mail that Thorin gave me. So again, he immediately goes back to the giving. So having started in sentence 1 with the, downplaying Hobbit style, oh, this is just an old Mathom, right? Then to this acknowledgement, right, of that heroic gift-giving tradition, right? Thorin gave this to me when I, first stood within the lonely, third time stood within the lonely mountain. The first time he stood, anyway, within the lonely mountain, after Smaug's had been evicted permanently, though they didn't know it at the time. And now here on the day of your setting off on your great quest, I now give it to you, right? So that second sentence, though still in a very simple way, gives a nod towards that. It is my dwarf mail that Thorin gave me. I got it back from Mickle Delving before I started, and I packed it with my luggage. I brought all the mementos of my journey away with me, except the ring. What do those two sentences say? those two sentences say, it does mean a lot to me, right? It does mean a lot to me. I packed it with my luggage. I took it away with me. Why? I brought all the mementos of my journey away with me, except the ring. Except the ring. Yeah. It does mean more to him, Aranas, than merely being useful. Yes. I think in this moment, I'm tempted to read Except the Ring in a very casual manner. That is, as we've said, I think that Bilbo is past the primary and secondary crises that he was going to have here, right? What happened in the Hall of Fire and in the Council of Elrond, those were both significant, right? Bilbo has now really and truly given away the ring. He has given it up in a way that he had not yet fully done prior to that, as evidenced by his repeated suggestions that he go home and fetch it. The casual reference, I brought all the mementos of my journey away with me, except the ring. He notes that the ring is exceptional, but it's only exceptional in the fact that that's the one he gave away. He alludes to the ring to emphasize not the importance of the ring, but the importance of the mithril coat, of all the other things, right? He didn't bring the ring away, but he brought everything else, right? His mithril coat, his sword, that nasty old cloak that he still has that he borrowed from Dwalin, right? He kept all of those things, right? Even, by the way, lumping the ring into the category mementos of my journey, right, downplays it in ways that he never has really done, right? Yeah. And he did give the ring away on his birthday, Evil Dr. Cannon, which is an important thing to recall. That is true. But I did not expect to use this, and I don't need it now, except to look at sometimes. He still does look at it sometimes. He keeps it secret, right? It's all rolled and folded up into a tiny little parcel, shoved into this, chest, which is kept tucked away, right? But he still does take it out to look at it sometimes. Again, he's fond of it, right? He's attached to it. But yeah, he does not downplay that it means a lot to him, right? And he knows that Frodo knows that it means a lot to him. But I did not expect to use this. As we were just saying before, I'm not sure I believe him when he says that. I did not expect to use this. No, expect, not expect. Was he still cherishing a notion, right? That he himself was denying, right? In a sense, I think quite possibly. Now, Aspen, that's a really interesting observation here, that he's working to tie his identity to his accomplishments and not to the ring. Yes, I mean, the attachments that he has to his other to the other mementos of his journey are all wholesome, right? Fond and honorable memories, whether they be fond memories of people, of occasions, of accomplishments, right? I'm not sure it's all about just accomplishments, because again, I mean, like his old dwarfhood is also a kind of self-deprecating memento, right? Remembering him running out without his hat, for instance. And yes, most of his accomplishments did come with the ring, Kurtzimus, so he has kind of distanced himself from it in that way. Yeah, good. And I agree, Matt, that he is attached to mementos rather than wealth, which does show that his hoarding is of a particular and sort of more wholesome kind. But yes, I agree, Eruichil, connecting him to other people. Yeah, I think that that's what he... mementos of my journey. Again, that's what he calls them, right? These are the things that connect him to the old times. I think of Glóin's smile, which comes from old memories, right? Absolutely. Yes. I wonder, Kendall is wondering if it's in some sense his looking at it sometimes, perhaps, is almost like Frodo touching the phial or Arwen's pendant instead of the ring later on at the end of the story. Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I wonder. Again, it certainly is. These are certainly much more wholesome mementos, and you'll remember that. It is interesting, Kendall, that you should recall this, because this is exactly what Frodo is going to be thinking. If you remember ahead, Frodo is going, when he's thinking about the coat, is going to be thinking that he wished that Bilbo had brought home nothing more perilous, right, from his journey than that. There is the one dark, significant, corrosive, radioactive memento that Bilbo brought home from his journey. But then again, it is also that was the act of providence, right? Bilbo was the ring finder. He was the one chosen to do it. I mean, it was the greatest miracle of the whole story, right? That it did happen. So, there's definitely sort of both sides to that there. And yes, Eruichil, I agree. In a Catholic sense, they're sacramentals conveying a grace and remembrance. Likewise with Frodo's connection to the phial. Yes, exactly. Like that. Good. And yes, the reference to hardly feeling any weight. You hardly feel any weight when you put it on. Somebody was saying before that this seems like an important piece of foreshadowing for the weight of the ring that Frodo is going to be bearing later on. Unlike that other memento of Bilbo's journey, right? The coat is, you'll hardly feel any weight when you put it on. It is not going to burden you. It will protect you. It will connect you to me. And through me to, the adventurous tradition behind me. And of course, in a sense, all the way back to Beren and Luthien. But it won't weigh you down. It won't burden you, right? Again, unlike that other gift that he's given him. Kurtzimus, the reference to the fact that it's that it's rather heavy for its size and then hardly feeling any weight when you put it on is what convinces me that it's rolled into a very small parcel indeed. Because it would be. I mean, a mail shirt, howsoever lightweight, would be heavier than you would expect. If you saw something that was the size of, I don't know what it would be the size of, rolled up? It's got to be small, though. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty compact. But, definitely something you can just hold in your hands like this. And it would be heavier than you would think. I mean, what does it look like? A cloak, maybe? Something like that? Burrito sized? Yeah, maybe. Something about like that? Exactly, right. But a burrito made of mithril. So, a mithril burrito would be heavier than an average burrito. So I think we can probably all agree on that. Yeah. It is also possible that it's a property that it acquires when you wear it. I can't rule that out. But yeah. Frodo's objection that he doesn't think he should look right in it. I don't think I should look right in it. He interrupts himself. Any guesses on what word he doesn't say there? And I agree, Mr. Bigga. Mithril Burrito would be a pretty good band name. I agree. I'm not sure what kind of band would be a good name for, but a ska band. I like that. Foolish, possibly foolish. I should look foolish, possibly even ridiculous, right? Absurd. These are words that Bilbo used, right? And this is why he laughs. Just what I said myself, right? He did in fact say, but that I feel magnificent, but I expect I look rather absurd, right? And I think that's exactly the thing that, that the kind of thing anyway, whether he's going to use that word or not, that Frodo was about to say. But he stops himself and says, well, I don't think I should look right in it, said Frodo, right? He doesn't want Bilbo to think that he's, mocking or spurning his gift. But yes, I agree. His hobbit sense objects to it. I agree. I don't think I should look right. It wouldn't suit him, right? It's not fitting for him to be dressed in this fancy coat, shining like moonlit silver and studded with white gems. That's not him. Just what I said myself, said Bilbo. But never mind about looks. You can wear it under your outer clothes. Come on. So, okay, but never mind about looks. This is him getting back to and useful, right? This is not a cosmetic upgrade, Frodo, right? That's not what's happening here. Yeah, I agree, Kendall. It is funny that Pippin is later called the Prince of the Halflings, but doesn't get this mithril coat. Yes. Never mind about looks. And I agree, Almaria, that pretty much does mean you do look foolish, but we can make it work. Yeah, exactly. Never mind about looks. You can wear it under your outer clothes. Why does he want him to hide it? Come on, you must share this secret with me. Don't tell anybody else. Why not? Why not? And yes, JJ and Arnas, you're absolutely right that Bilbo is saying it's okay, you can still equip your old gear cosmetically. Yes. Why does he say that? Now, it makes sense that Frodo wouldn't go around wearing it publicly, right? I mean, you might want to keep a lower profile than that, Frodo, would be sound advice, right? Wear it under your outer clothes because, seriously, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb in that thing, and you're going to have every fortune-hunting brigand that you come within 5 miles of chasing after you. I'm not saying that doesn't make sense, right? But why make it a secret? Why don't tell anybody else? Don't tell anybody else? Don't tell Gandalf? Don't tell Aragorn? Don't tell Merry and Pippin and Sam? Why not? Why not? That's not obvious, I think. Right. As Mr. Biggest says, okay, if anyone asks you're Mr. Underhill and you don't have a mithril coat, it is an interesting parallel to that sort of moment. I can't think of a practical reason. I mean, I cannot believe that he's thinking like, don't tell everybody else because they'll blab. Like, seriously, what are the orcs going to hear about it? You know, from Merry and Pippin or something? Like, it's, you know, Pippin might be a loudmouth, but seriously, like, who's going to find out? You know, who's going to care? I don't know. You know, I don't see necessarily a really good reason for that. Now, Ambrosius Aurelianus, I wonder, with the ring able to work on people's desires, best not to dangle a mithril coat on an almost helpless small fellow before the eyes of most, like, for example, Boromir. I wonder. On the one hand, that makes sense. The desire for the ring and the desire for the mithril coat are indeed paralleled together, right? When we get the orcs fighting over the coat, there will be a kind of parallel that's established there. So on the one hand, I acknowledge that. But on the other hand, I have to say that it feels to me, and we'll see. We'll see what I think about this as we move forward. But from here, it seems to me that, how to say it? The two things appeal to quite different audiences, perhaps, is one way that I would say it, right? That is, people who are drawn to the ring are almost never people that I would expect to want to pinch the mithril coat. People that are overcome with desire for the mithril coat tend to be people who would not desire the ring for themselves. Do you see what I mean? Evil Dr. Cannon, I don't think the orcs would want the ring. Not for themselves. Grishnak has a notion, right? But we're never really quite sure what his notion is. It is clearly get the ring away from Ugluk so he doesn't take it to Saruman. But what exactly Grishnak means to do with it, I'm not sure. But I still think that even for the orcs, their relationship with the ring, I'm not saying they're not interested in the ring. I'm not saying that. But I don't think that they're drawn to the ring in the way that Boromir is. They're drawn to it, but not in the same way. We know Saruman wants the ring. We know Denethor is tempted by the ring. We know that Boromir briefly falls into it. Kendall, exactly. We don't see Grishnak doesn't monologue, right? No, the ring's not actually there, but still. Yeah. Well, for Thoughtless, the orcs are tempted to set up on their own with lots of loot handy without the ring. That's them escaping or believing they can escape the influence of the ring. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think that the two desires are very similar. Yeah. Yeah. Now, Neoplatonian for sure. Again, like that he should conceal it from view, right? Is like he clearly shouldn't just wear it as his outer layer, right? I mean, that would be ridiculous, drawing everybody's attention like that. But yeah, more than anything, I think you must share this secret with me. And a couple of you have been kind of talking this way, that he's, yeah, I think I'm agreeing with both Matt, and people said similar things to Matt before. And then with JJ here as well. I think it's a combination of Bilbo having a joke on people. It's kind of hobbitry. It will amuse him to think that Frodo is safe and nobody else knows, right? For the mithril coat, the presence of the mithril coat not to be generally known, it probably will become known, right, at some point. And then it will be a funny joke. And so it will, right? And so it will. So yeah, I do think that he is, planning a joke with a capital J like he did at his party, in one sense, yes. But I also think that I agree with JJ that part of what he's doing is he knows that Frodo is uncomfortable, and that Frodo himself will be more comfortable if others don't know that he has it. That he feels, he doesn't think that he should look right in it. He's feeling self-conscious about taking it, about wearing it. And I do agree. I think that last speech, the primary theme of that last speech on this passage is Bilbo trying to convince him to take it. Never mind about looks. Yes, I said myself that I expected that I look absurd in it, right? It doesn't really suit us exactly. We are not, in fact, heroic Germanic figures, right? We are mere humble hobbits circulating mathoms, but never mind about looks. You can hide it. Wear it under your outer clothes. Share this secret with me, right? Humor me. Let's make this into a game, right? And won't it be funny when they find out that you're actually invulnerable to almost all weapons, right? That'll be hilarious. Don't tell anybody else. Because then he turns to his next argument. But I should feel happier if I knew you were wearing it. Humor me, right? Do it for my sake. You might feel that you're making too much of yourself, right? Like you deserve special protection, like you've merited this gift. Remember also, when Thorin gave it to Bilbo, he gave it to him as a reward for his service, right? And Frodo might also be thinking, what have I done? I've not done anything yet, right? I haven't earned this. All of these mementos of your journey, these great and priceless things that you found and earned on your great journey. I'm just starting my journey. I'm still in the running out without my hat phase of the journey, right? Maybe you can give me your secondhand dwarf cloak, your secondhand dwarf hood, which is, how Bilbo got his, right? Secondhand dwarf hood, right? But it would be absurdly self-aggrandizing for me to wear this princely suit of armor as if I deserved it, right? So yes, I do think that that's a big part of why he's going in this direction, right? And then the emotional appeal. I should feel happier if I knew you were wearing it, right? Humor an old man. And then the final touch on its usefulness, right? I have a fancy it would turn even the knives of the Black Riders. He ended in a low voice, right? He doesn't want to go there. He doesn't really want to talk about that. He seems a little bit uneasy bringing that up to Frodo, right? But should you find yourself in a place where some ringwraith or other is attempting to stab you in the back of the shoulder, then no, that won't work anymore. Now will it? And somebody was asking before that, do I think it actually would turn the knives of the Black Riders? Heck yes. I absolutely think it would turn the knives of the Black Riders. Yeah, totally do. We don't have much evidence that there is any weapon that it won't turn. Do we have any reason to think, any concrete reason, to think that there is a single weapon that would not be deflected by the mithril coat? Exactly. They're physical weapons, Emma Thorne. Exactly. Yes. A warhammer. Yes, it's true. Chainmail is not the greatest against bludgeoning weapons. That's true. So yes, a very large bludgeoning weapon, it would not do very much good against. A hammer or an anvil. Yes, exactly. A very small needle indeed, Kendall. Probably. Yes, probably. But again, we never see him. We will see Frodo stabbed by spears and shot by arrows, and he is not going to be materially harmed by any of these things. Yeah, I agree, Mad Violinist. Maybe that's why the Witch King is wielding a mace, right? When it comes to it in the battle, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. I agree, Dan. Not only are the Morgul knives physical weapons, but they seem to be deliberately designed to splinter. I agree. I do think that they would. I definitely believe that the Morgul blade would not have penetrated the mithril coat. Gollum's teeth, yes, Gollum's teeth would not get through it either. But of course, Gollum is unlikely to bite you in the back or the belly or something like that. He's or your shoulder. Well, I guess if you're Sam, he's going to bite your shoulder, but that's different. See, if Sam had been wearing a mithril coat, he would have been he wouldn't have gotten bitten by Gollum. Yeah. Nope, I don't think anything's getting through. Anything realistic is gonna be getting through there. You're right, Neoplatonian. If only, in retrospect, if only Bilbo had a nice pair of mithril gloves. Okay, so he has convinced Frodo to wear this. All right, I think we do have one more passage, and then the poem. We have the and the next passage is going to be the most. I like the most British passage in some ways in the Lord of the Rings when the culmination of this gift-giving scene, and we come to this moment of the exchange of deep affection, and both Frodo and Bilbo are going to be frightfully uncomfortable about that. Anyway, but it is time for our field trip now, so we're going to stop now. We will do we will see Frodo putting on the coat and their final the final exchanges of affection next week, and then the poem. So I know, right, Rowan, we just did 4 entire paragraphs, which is really quite a lot. And what are the gems? The white gems? Yeah, don't know. I think that he would say diamonds if they were diamonds. That's a word Tolkien uses. He says they're white gems. We've got pearl and crystal on the belt, but he doesn't call them either pearl or crystal, and pearls aren't exactly gems anyway. So yeah, don't know what they are. I kind of think he says white gems just because we don't necessarily know what they are. Like, we don't necessarily have these gems anymore. But anyway, all right. But I'm really stopping now. Okay. All right. Field trip time. Good evening, Druid's Fire. How are you?
I'm doing splendiferous. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. So yes, we have... oops. I just totally did exactly the wrong thing. I hate it when I hit the wrong button. Well, let's see if it works. That's not exactly what I call working. But that's just not right. Hang on. Okay. No. Oh well. Darn it.
What did you break?
I broke everything. That's my problem. Okay. Hang on. I'm trying to fix it.
That's fine. I'm just getting everybody rated up
Okay.
nice and neat.
Got it. That's just what I wanted. Okay. I think I unbroke it.
Awesome.
Mostly. Almost unbroke it. Almost unbroke
Nancy, anyone can be on the shenanigans committee. We're an anarchic institution, apparently.
Are you? Are you an
I don't know. I don't know.
syndicalist commune?
Something like that. I have a feeling somebody took my my title from Slack and decided to run with it, and I'm okay with that. I am officially the instigator of shenanigans, and it's
yes.
like,
Did you see that we have the shenanigans committee design on our merch store?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Yes, I was told that I and Sparrow have to be on that committee.
Yes. Yeah, it was also a New England Moot reference when the shenanigans committee struck, because I finally prepared myself here, I think. Okay. All right. So we're headed back to Eregion, which I think we start at Gwingris, because that was the last milestone we got to still. Mm-hmm. So we'll meet up at Gwingris, and we'll ride out from there, down the road. All right. Oh wait, what was I going to say? Oh, hey, look, it's daylight. That's unusual.
Yeah, that never happened.
It's dusk. Of course it is. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. Well, let's get on the road and enjoy the daylight.
If anybody needs an invitation to the raid, I think I have everybody. You send it to Kiriana.
All right.
Are you riding the regular horse or your war steed today?
Regular.
All right.
I try not to ride the war steed unless at great need. Or if I'm crossing long distances. In a particularly straight line.
They are a bit recalcitrant, yes, indeed.
Yes. All right. Off we go. Let us head down the road. We got to that rather peculiar logging camp by that bunch of Dunlendings who have clearly been sent up here for up to no good from Saruman.
He's surprisingly Brelandish looking set of structures.
Yeah, the lumberyard, you mean? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that banner, which is the lumber, is that lumberyard, is that near the road here? It is, isn't it?
It's kind of, yeah.
Okay. I'm tempted to run back to that banner and look at it while there's daylight, but
I think you should.
Maybe
I mean, I was just gave in to my temptation to pick indigo plant along the way, so, you know.
I see. Well, one has to do what one has to do.
Indeed so. So we're going to want to bang a left here shortly.
Yes. Not quite that short way. I just sort of randomly veered off the road. Okay.
So normal. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So here is where the left-hand turn comes. And I'm just gonna go up here and see, yeah, just north of the road up here is where that camp was. Let me just take a quick look and see if I can find that banner. Okay, there's the wood. There's the pond. It was on the other side of the pond, the banner, as I recall. Here's the stump and the rock in the sort of trellis there. Okay, and there is the
bloody banner.
The bloody banner. Which is hard to see in almost any light, but okay. Yeah, just a dirty rag with blood stains and the claw marks, which look like bear claws or something.
Yeah, they do kind of look like bear claws.
I mean, those are definitely, which is strange because it's all hung about with boar tusks. And then we have like the rakings of, like the 3 separate rakings of,
and the blood at the same time. The blood's caused by the claws. I would imagine they would go in line with the claws, right?
It's a very abstract kind of banner in that sense, right? Like, we want to evoke an attack as by a bear, right? So imagine, when you see the banner, imagine that you've just been assaulted by a bear and all we're going to leave of you is something that looks like this. I mean, that's an incredibly indirect. It is, Almaria, almost like modern art in that way. Rather than representing a fearsome bear or something like that, or even a set of bloody claws or something, we're just going to, I don't know, it'd be almost like having a banner that just has like a sidewalk chalk silhouette of a corpse on it. You know, like, this is all we're going to leave after the fact, right? Is almost what that kind of effect seems to be. Exactly.
It feels like a bear,
it evokes the feeling of bear. Exactly.
But it could be possibly dragon or worm, because I don't recall there being any bears in this neck of the woods, but there are worms nearby. It's
true, though I don't think the claw marks need have been made by an actual bear and or worm. I mean, of course, one can't rule out the fact that this, right, as somebody just turns into a bear right there. You can't rule out the fact that this was just, in fact, a plain banner, and it, in fact, just got covered with blood and scratches one day, you know, during some incident or other. But
the colors kind of remind me of, you know, super ancient cave drawings.
Yeah, I don't ever remember seeing a banner quite like this. And it's not an orc banner. I mean, I don't think it's an orc banner. It's a Dunlending banner. And it's way abstract for any other Dunlending art we've seen. Okay. All right. That's all. We were here last week. I just wanted to see it in the daylight. So there we are. Because, I mean,
definitely not an orc banner, because the pole is definitely too nice.
And decorated with boar tusks rather than human bones. So,
right.
Again, presumably. Presumably not. Yeah. All right. Where are we? Okay. We're turning left. Got it. Okay. Is that right? That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Left.
To the south.
That's where we're going. We're going to the next ruin. Pend Eregion is the region that we've come to. Yeah, now I remember, Emily, that the quest function of that banner is to summon the boss to fight at the culmination of the quest chain. But that suggests even more strongly that it's, you know, his banner, right? That it's the boss's banner. Okay. All right. More elf ruins. Now, what do we see right away? Once again, not a defensive structure. Look at all these windows, huge windows at ground level. And then this, I mean, it looks like there might have been a gate here, right? But it was clearly just like an
archway,
decorative
not a door.
gate. I think there might have been a gate, but it would have been like a metal gate, right? I can imagine again, more with the curly cues and kind of fancy decorative thing, but there might not even have been one. It might have just always have been an archway.
Well, I'm not seeing anything that would seem to be like hinges or supports for a door of some kind.
Yeah, not necessarily. I don't either. And they are round columns, so perhaps that wouldn't be the best place to attach such a door. Yeah. Right, it could be a gate to keep the Pomeranian from getting out, JJ. It's possible. But yeah, okay, so and we have the same kind of highly decorative swirly gold inlay that we had before. This really interesting decorative tree pot, right? With its cute little feet down here. Okay, so some of these, now remember, these places are thousands, like 5,000 years old. So the trees, I mean, like these trees, like this one standing here, right, there's no reason to think that this tree is original. This does not look like a 5,000-year-old tree, but yet these trees in pots here probably are. I mean, that looks like a potted tree.
It is a potted tree, which would imply if the tree is so tiny, then somebody's been in here recently to mess with it.
Maybe. It doesn't look like it was very artfully shaped, but yeah, some kind of, because if the original potted tree had died, presumably a single tree would not have grown out of the center of it in exactly the same way. Yeah, right. Yeah, Wolf, yeah, exactly. I think this is an Noldoran bonsai tree that's just totally out of control. That's what happens if you leave your bonsai tree to grow for 5,000 years.
With no guidance.
With no guidance at all, exactly. Okay. This is a much less open concept settlement than the other, right? I'm going to dismount too. What am I riding around for? Now notice we have exactly the same textures. Here's that kind of chased metal texture here.
Yeah, the brushed metal, the copper.
The brushed metal.
It looks like copper, but it would have oxidized in 5,000 years. Right.
Clearly not copper.
We have the inlay, the greenish inlay with everything. It's a nice offset. Reminds me of my elven.
Oh, you mean the stone, the like teal stone here?
Yeah, with the veins of like white in it.
Yes, and we saw some of that before too. So it's very similar to Gwingris. It's presumably the same. Okay, and this is the edge, right? Yes, this is the edge. So here next to, again, we just have this doorway once again. No interest in security. And not just security, but again, with you, I say there doesn't look like there ever was a door here. This was always an archway, I think.
I'm just kind of wondering if maybe the hill has slid down a bit, because just of the angle of the hill down into the doorway, it seems very strange that they would have built. I mean, obviously the out of character reason is that's how the devs placed it, but in character it looks like something was built and then a landslide came down and then grass grew over it.
Or something, yeah, it does. I agree. It's likely it changed a little bit. It is a little bit strange to be like, and now we have a door on an incredibly steep hill, right? I love the view out from here. You can see nothing but the side of this hill, right? I mean, it does seem a little bit strange. It is clear that they deliberately built this down in the valley with those under those hills right there.
Right.
I mean, the mountains presumably were there already. But I agree, it is very possible that things have changed a bit. And we're getting half-orcs here. So again, these are more evidence of Sarumanic occupation, right?
It would make sense versus the Breeland half-orcs that we are accustomed to on the other side of the Troll Trolls.
Okay. So we have this other gateway. So this whole... We walk in first, and then this was a courtyard. Right? This was a courtyard, clearly. And we have our potted bonsai trees, and we have a gateway to this. And this seems to be some kind of building. Maybe this was a reception hall. Like you come in, you ride in through the gate, or the gate archway, right? And you come in here, and somebody takes your horse, and the stables are probably over in that direction where the interesting rubble is. And then you went into the welcoming hall in here, right? And you would be greeted in here, and then you'd be ushered right through into here where they were serving hors d'oeuvres or something.
Little
right?
finger foods.
Yeah, that's where the party is, right? So we got some party areas in here, but it's all kind of indoors. Although, again, they had a very vague sense of indoors. We can see that the whole thing was arched over with those trellises, again, which may or may not have been covered with glass. So it was still very bright. It would have been very open day and night, an open view of the sky throughout. I don't think this was roofed over. You think?
I don't think maybe this courtyard was.
Yeah, I think it was an open courtyard. You can see the arches went over that way, so that other part was definitely arched over. But yeah, here not so much, I don't think. Yeah, again, you can see the like double archway that used to be over the entrance point. Okay, but then we pass through here. So this was, again, this courtyard. We have a wall here to establish the courtyard, and then what? A few separate buildings in here. This was a separate building, it looks like. And then this was a separate building down here.
Well, it's possible there was some
tower
connection. But
thing?
they do seem to be outbuildings rather than the actual main facility.
Yeah, maybe. Now, this ditch over here, these ditches, rather, I guess I should say, this, I suspect, this is my most likely candidate for geographic feature that was not here at the time when this place was built.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that way.
Oh, and we've got some wolves right down there. Wolves and what? Boars? Who's this over here?
Yeah.
Oh, it's another warg. Okay.
Wolves and wargs and boars and bears.
Yeah.
Oh, why? No bears, actually.
Right, no bears yet. Okay.
Amathorn says there could have been a stream here, which would kind of make sense. The 5,000 years of erosion would have done something to this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Dry steam beds as they're like geological foreshadowings of the Saranan later on, right? I agree, but yeah, from the side, so this looks like another building, like the other building, that we saw over there. So there were several separate buildings. I don't see here much evidence of, once again, much evidence of living quarters. Did they just kind of wander about? Huh. Just having a look at this guy here. What's on his belt buckle? Not to like get in his personal space or anything, but oh man, he's attempting to kill somebody now. It's really complicated.
We have lobies here who. Yeah.
Right, who are going to aggro him. Yeah.
Yes, that is the case.
Sorry, I was just briefly enjoying the
It looked like a face of some kind in the brief glimpse
Maybe.
I got.
I'm not sure I saw a face, but it was pretty ornate. It was unexpectedly ornate.
Let's see.
Interesting little sward of grass here.
This skirmisher does not have one, but he has an interesting crown on his chest.
A crown,
Like a crown design.
Where is he?
Over where I am.
Oh, this guy.
Lobies don't get close to this dude.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. Huh.
And he's got blood on his hands.
Yeah. It's like totally unsanitary. Unsanitary as well, I think. It's crownish. It's definitely crownish. Oh, who's he fighting? The bear? Yeah.
Yeah, our Bjorning friend is only level 48.
Aha. Right, he's on level for around here. Well, that's all right. So there's nothing else over here, is there? Among these stones?
Not that I'm aware of. Just, stuff from the, somebody summoned the bad guy.
What?
Oh, it looks like somebody's actually questing here. Oops.
Oh, oops. Yeah. Sorry, well,
surprised.
At least we won't necessarily hog all the kills. Sorry, I was just looking at these standing stones and trying to see if there was anything. Sometimes a rock is just a rock. But I agree with Amathorn that it's very possible that... So first of all, Nancy is pointing out that Sauron, with his army, of course, did pass through here in the Second Age. So there's every reason to think that a bunch of these things got destroyed, like actively torn down during that time. And that's true. Especially this one. I mean, this one would have been on the way. Gwingris is a little tucked out of the way, so that could potentially have escaped notice. But I also don't think there's much reason to think that there was much here. I like the idea, as Amathorn was suggesting, that they could have lived in tents like we see them doing in Lothlorien, like the pavilion that they make for the company. They set up for the company in Lothlorien. I think it very likely that the elves are not necessarily living, full time in these places, but just kind of circulating
nomadic
from one party spot to another. Yeah. And I don't know what that peak is. I think it's, I don't think it's a significant peak. I think it's just one of the closer peaks of the Misty Mountains. Yeah, it is the wrong direction for Carothras. That's why I was just like checking on the map where I was. Yeah, I'm not facing the Redhorn Pass. So, yeah.
Yeah, you'll know Carothras when we get there. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
It's a very cold place. Full of fell voices. No, it's to the southeast of us, JJ.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I'm facing the right direction, but I'm too far north, essentially. If I were further south and facing this direction, I would be. I mean, because I'm parallel to it, but it's not quite. I don't think it's quite it.
We can go up there because it's the next pass down when we get there.
We'll get there. All right, so next time, let's look. I guess we can go down to Echadaregion next time.
Is that milestone there?
Yeah. We'll go down and set the milestone there. And then we will avoid the Redhorn Pass and we'll go through Lowholland. I think we can skirt around and, I don't really want to go to the Saranen yet either. I think we'll go to Echadaregion and then move from there over towards Mirabel, actually.
Okay.
Is I think where we can go.
Elf ruins and more elf ruins.
That's it.
Like Lembas.
That's it. All right. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us today. We did not see one of the things I was looking for. We did not see any of those tree antler.
I know. I was actually kind of
things.
looking for them, because I didn't remember seeing
too.
them.
I was too.
Oh, weird.
But
Disappointed.
Yep, didn't see any. So we'll see. All right.
Wingris
Thank
for the
you guys
tree
for joining us. Yeah. We will be. Valoria should be back next week. She was feeling a little under the weather today, but we should be back next week, and we will continue our way south here through Erekion. Thanks everybody for joining us. Good night now.
Night.